they send their entries to Grammys. And then they announce that we have been selected. And everybody has got, we are being considered, they get a letter.
Yeah.
So based on that letter, they'll put out on social media. When that is not actually the case. Unless you get a nomination, then...
Yeah.
But till then, everybody has made their this thing. I've been this thing, and people think they've already got Grammys. There are people who have actually gone, including senior musicians, who have said that we've been selected as to be nominated and all. When it's actually that shortlisting procedure, they're in that selection procedure.
Namaste and welcome to Music Mehfil India. Our guest today is Narendra Kusnur. In today's conversation, we look at the Indian music industry from the point of view of an experienced music journalist. From becoming a journalist, reviewing songs, albums, gigs, and venues, to keenly observing industry trends, we've unpacked quite a bit in this one. I'm Aruna Jade, a composer and singer, and it's a privilege to host this series where we talk about the Davids and the Goliaths, the loners and the tribes of the music scene, for these are the stories of music from India. So, how long have you been doing this?
As a music journalist, 30 years, but as a journalist, 39 or almost. I started in 1984 as a journalist. It took me about 10 or 11 years to find this beat. So that's how long it is. Yeah.
So, if you could briefly trace how the past 4 decades have been.
Okay. To begin with, I never wanted to become a journalist. My
Fantastic.
father was a journalist, and I would see him do night shifts and all that. And I said, this is not my scene. It's like I'd prefer to do management or something like that. And I did appear for a few management courses. But then after my college, I wanted to go on a holiday. So where was the money? I did a summer job, which happened to be in Sun magazine. So that's where I got into journalism. And I did a few articles on music then, but I wouldn't be called a music journalist because it was like among other. And we used to just rehash 4-5 magazines and combine them and do
Right.
such things. So then I kept on, like I joined Times of India, and like because I never went into management, I just continued. And I got into page making and stuff, like page design and all that. So that element. But spent many years there. Then it so happened that after some 3-4 jobs, I joined Midday. And before that, I used to write on advertising and a little bit of business and all that. I was in business world and stuff. So, and Midday, I started writing on the same subjects like advertising and a little bit of IT. And one fine day, the person who used to write on music, he went on a holiday and he never came back because he got a job.
Oh, okay.
No, he didn't go to space. But yeah, that's how it. And then they were looking for people who would write and all that. And I, luckily, growing up, I was exposed to different forms of music. Like my mom learned Hindustani classical, so that was there. I would go to concerts and see. I've seen most of the legends, like first in Bombay, then in Delhi. Jasraj family was pretty close in Bombay. And then later on in Delhi, like we saw Shiv Kumar ji and Amjad Ali Khan, and all
Very
as a
nice.
teenager.
And instrument exposure.
Yeah, so that kind of this thing, different instruments, different vocals and all that. So that was
Yeah.
Hindustani classical. Simultaneously, I was keeping in touch with the film music that was happening, which was Rajesh Khanna first, and then later on Bachchan and all those. So whatever the latest hits were. At the same time, I liked English music because one uncle used to like it. So all the old timers, Cliff Richard and Jim Reeves and all that.
And did you ever pick up an instrument yourself?
I learnt a bit of tabla and harmonium, but that stopped because I wanted to become Sunil Gavaskar, which never happened. So neither here nor there, and I ended up doing my own like a regular kid in college and all that. So, but I grew up listening to a lot of music from there. Suddenly there was a ghazal wave when I was about 17, 18.
Yeah.
And so started with Jagjit Singh, Pankaj Udhas.
This is what decade?
This is 1980, 81, like I've talked about that.
Nice.
Like,
So the 80s in India were
Yeah.
Ghazal wave. Yeah.
Yeah, Ghazal Wave. So 80s were the Ghazal Wave, and I was in college around 81 to 84. So that people can calculate my age now. So yeah, but so that was when I got exposed to ghazals, and so it simultaneously, and rock music happened simultaneously, because as college this thing, everybody was listening to rock. So maybe beach mein there was the disco and all. So that way I was lucky to listen to a lot of genres. And I never thought they would come up any use, because it was just a passion to listen and all that. And I was known for my trying to build up my own collection and listening to this thing. I would attend a few concerts here and there. But who thought later that I'll end up within the line? So when this happened, when I was when I suddenly started doing a few articles, and it so happened that one day they were looking for somebody who had to interview Biddu, the composer, and the assistant editor that time, Ranjana. She just came announcing, "Is anybody familiar with Biddu?" And I said, "Yes." So they said, "Okay, go and interview him." I said, "What?" So, and I was like, Biddu, because he had had a few hits like Aap Jaisa Koi and Dance
Right.
Little Lady and all that, Kung Fu Fighting and all that. I said, "Man, this is something." So I went, and that was how it um, started. And then they said, slowly do reviews and all that. And then it just continued. And then one day my editor told me, I asked Meman was the editor. He said, "You're better off as a music writer than as a business writer. That's not for you. Please come here." So that's how it
Lovely.
started.
But so back then, what, where would people read reviews?
No, I was in Midday, which was
Yeah.
pretty well read. It still is.
Yeah.
So that was, and they were, they and Bombay Times and Express were three
So
papers
mostly
which
newspapers,
newspapers. Yeah, there was no web this thing yet. This I'm talking about the
magazines.
mid 90s now.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
have reached the mid 90s, and so magazines also. There were some magazines like TV and Video World.
yeah.
Raga to Rock had just started that time, and yeah, so Record magazine. These were certain
Yeah.
magazines. Then RSJ, which was a rock
Yeah, yeah.
magazine and all that. So those started around the mid 90s, late 90s, and all that. Then when the music channels came, the
Yeah.
MTV and Channel V, when they became big, sometime 96, that whole indie pop boom and all that. That's when music started getting a lot of mainstream coverage. It was
Right.
because of pop. I mean, people already always wrote about film music,
Correct.
and some of the senior artists in Hindustani classical or Carnatic music
Yeah.
in papers like Hindu and all that. But pop means like another new genre started. So
Yeah,
that's when,
Shan and
yeah, Shan was a little, Alisha Chinnai, Daler Mehndi, this
Sunita Rao, yeah.
Sunita Rao. Yeah. So that was when the whole this thing started in terms of. And I happened to get into this field when that whole indie pop was booming.
Yeah.
Like today we talk about the indie scene. Those days it was the
Yeah.
indie pop scene.
Correct.
So, and slowly I started writing, and I was afraid of a few this thing. I was like not very confident of interviewing classical musicians, because though I was familiar with this thing, but
Yeah.
one had to be a little technical and things like that. So those things, but slowly once you start meeting people, it sort of comes
Yeah.
through. Like,
How do you approach learning about genres you are unfamiliar with or not the most comfortable with, as you just mentioned?
okay, look, in terms of classical music, I was always exposed to it, but
Yeah.
in terms of as a writer, it requires a completely different.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of reading that I did those days. I mean, this is before the net happened and all that. So the
Yeah.
only source was books. And or magazines, and there weren't too many magazines on Indian music, but you had biographies and you had certain books on musicians and
That
technique.
explains why you have
Yeah,
such a biography
yeah. So
reading
it's
list.
it's
Yeah.
sort of this. That was the only way. There were other ways to find out things. Were go and sit in the mouse whenever I was free, and I used to
Yeah.
look at the back of the inlay cards and take down names, lyricist kaun hai, all these things, like, because you didn't have the net. Today you just press a button and you find out who the lyricist is. That day, like,
Yeah.
and so if there was a best of Gulzar, I would write down all the songs, who was the composer, who this and all that, like, and that was a learning that we did those days. So whenever I was not on assignment or something, that was my second library, as I called it. Like, and but yeah, slowly one gets exposed to different genres. There's also this thing that you interact with different kinds of people during that journey. So a person's musical taste, one realizes, is an extension of his personality in some ways.
Correct.
like a person who's into rock music, he's got a certain set of friends and he's got a certain this thing and all. It's, I mean, it's not a rule, but by
Yeah.
and large the case. So one has to understand what they like, what they this thing and all that. So if you go to a rock concert, you know what kind of people you're going to meet. If you go to a classical concert, you know. And this again, the kind of conversations you have with them. Similarly,
Yeah.
while meeting rock musicians, while meeting jazz musicians, while
Yeah.
meeting, it's a different set of conversations. It's not
Right.
like you can't have the same kind of approach to all of them, like because they've got different this thing. And then later on, people started melding genres and all that. So there was
Yeah.
certain this thing. One has to understand the mind of a musician, like how he functions, what are his this thing. There are some musicians who are traditional. There's some traditionalists, some musicians who are experimental. So one has to get into those kind of things also. So it's a slow learning process, which happens even today. Like even today, I'm trying to discover how certain genres work. But slowly, I got into through reading and things like that. Western classical was something I wasn't really familiar with in terms of
Yeah.
the techniques and the basic how it functions, the whole system functions. But there were a couple of books which I bought there, and so the confidence
Nice.
level increased there.
So, challenges and opportunities that you faced along the way. I mean, since you are have already mentioned a few, which is dealing with genres that
Yeah.
you weren't familiar with. What else?
Challenges in the sense that once this the whole there were two things. One was the TV journalism. So previously, before this thing, there were limited channels,
Yeah.
and so they gave us enough time, and we had that this thing. When TV came, TV obviously got the more
Yeah.
this thing from the PR perspective, like, and they would obviously give more this thing. They needed to be seen.
Yeah.
So unless we worked a little harder in getting the exclusive interview, we never got it. Of course, it
Right.
helped that I was working with Midday, so obviously it was this thing like they prefer publications with a larger circulation. That's how it
No.
this thing. So in Midday में उतना वो नहीं था, but later on, like when I started this thing because of their other priorities,
Yeah.
one has to really be pushy or like say that this is give some promise that we are going to publish it here and all that. Otherwise, it's so that was one. With web coming in again, there was a lot of information floating around,
Yeah.
and a lot of information is just like rehashed and recycled
Yeah.
right from the beginning, which we felt. And I mean, if I publish something, it's very easy for somebody to pick it up and just add a few this thing or
Yeah.
combine 2 3 articles by through other people and do something, and it just floats and gets forwarded. So that is
Yeah.
something, and it's become even all the more prominent with WhatsApp now.
Yeah.
So those are the challenges that this thing. So that happened with our kind of writing. But yeah, that's part of the this thing with uh, changes in the whole atmosphere and all that. One has to get used to that. It's important to be honest, whatever this thing. Like there are times when musicians may not really like what you write because you're target. I mean, musicians and concerts are primarily what I focused on.
Yeah.
So sometimes a bad review gets a little bit of this thing. इसको क्या मालूम है इसने कभी instrument नहीं बजाया. Those kind of
Oh.
this thing. So, but again, there also it's a subjective view. Like it's not something that is this thing. Everybody has its own music taste. Music is one thing that. I mean, there's this thing that all music is made from the same 7 notes.
Yeah.
Yet, no sets of ears are the same. Like because if you put 10 people in a room and ask them their favorite Rahman or Hardy Burman songs, they'll all give different answers.
Yeah.
Like so, everybody's got a different taste, a different way of reacting to music and all that. So that's the way what I tell them if they feel bad about a bad review. So I said it's I mean.
How do you think musicians should what do you think musicians should take away from any review or feedback that they get, be it positive or negative?
Uh, I think basically, look, I think musicians should, and I mean, they should realize the fact that we are also doing our jobs primarily.
Yeah.
And unless it's something that is personal or biased or something that talks about, which is not this thing. If it's a constructive criticism, then it's absolutely they should take it in this sense. And I know musicians who have done that. Whenever I've given them a this thing, and I also don't like blast musician in my this thing.
Yes.
Which is also from my part. I have that this thing that I should not just just go all out against
Yeah,
them and
yeah.
all that. So if there are musicians, as I said, who have called me and said that, look, you've got a point here. I'll
Yeah.
consider it next time. Or and there are musicians who haven't taken that also. So it's both ways. But basically, if the criticism is constructive, and if the positive thing also, it should not be like कि अच्छा इसने अच्छा लिख दिया तो अच्छा है. There might be 10 other people who are not liking it also. One should take their views also. Like so,
Yeah.
that's this thing. Like mine is not. Somebody years ago, somebody was doing an article on critics. Times of India's one supplement, and they said I a critic. I mean I told them a critic, a single critic cannot make or break anything. Like it's a collection of views, and then the public has its own taste. Because my writing, and if suppose I write great things, and the chances are that you will buy an album because I said so, and the chances are that you may not like it, and then you may say that this guy, what is he writing? Like that kind of thing also happens with us. That's also a challenge like that. So, yeah.
Speaking of critiquing, I've read a lot of your work which speaks about live shows, at least recently, because that's been on the high. Everybody's making up for the lost time in the lockdown. But do you also critique albums
Yeah,
and
I used
singles?
to much more. I do. In fact, I have a singles weekly spot in my blog. I used to do it for Music Plus. Then Music Plus changed their format, and also they became a totally business oriented website.
Yeah.
So I did that for about 4 years for them. Where weekly we used to publish some 4 song singles and all that.
Yeah.
So I just continued that in my blog.
And at the moment, who all do you write for?
In terms of publications, Hindu, Rolling Stone India,
Yeah.
Hindustan Times occasionally, as and when,
Yeah.
Seniors Today. These are the four, and Free Press Journal. I have a fortnightly column in Free Press Journal,
Nice.
which is an industry trends column. So the thing in Hindu, it's more previews or interviews or reviews that way.
Yeah.
Hindustan Times, it's been something related, like when this MM Cream won Kirwani, he won the awards,
Yeah, yeah.
Oscars,
Oscars.
and the one before that also,
Yeah.
uh, Golden Globes.
Yeah.
So then I wrote about that thing, and when Tina Turner passed away, I wrote about
Yeah.
her thing, and also that's Hindustan Times. Seniors Today, I had a column on. I mean, it was more of a listicle, which are very popular these days. I don't sort of always believe that the listicles are very, they cannot be accurate. Like if I put a top 10, there are many other songs which actually deserve to be there. But that's the way people like reading them. They
Yeah.
like reading, and
Just for the audience who may not know the term listicle.
listicle is a list of songs, which I mean, that's a term that even I learned from some editors who like to throw fancy words. So I was given that, let's do a listicle. So I said, okay. And then even I figured out what that is. It's basically you say, suppose you talk about Shreya Ghoshal. So top 10 Shreya Ghoshal songs. Or suppose it's raining, suddenly you don't know what to write. So, okay, top 10 rain songs.
Rain songs, yeah.
So that is a listicle and all that.
Listicle.
And then there'll be people always saying that इसने ये क्यों नहीं डाला, मेरा favorite था ये ऐसा क्यों नहीं डाला है, how can you put this song and all that. So that, and it leads to debate, which is what people the editors and the publishers like, because
Yeah.
there is some kind of activity around it. Otherwise so these things I used to do for Seniors Today. I mean, I do for Seniors Today, which I write on old film songs and all that. So it's all related to somebody's birthday or some season or something like that. And
Yeah. So coming back to critiquing albums and singles, what are the parameters you consider while critiquing them? What's your process like?
Okay, first rule is that I listen to every album or single at least 5 times.
Wow.
Yeah, because that is a must, because sometimes you like something immediately,
Yeah.
but later it's sort of you start having doubts about it. Sometimes you don't like something immediately, and
Yeah.
later you start
It grows on
yeah,
you.
it grows on you. So 5 is an accurate number where this thing. I prefer to use the names of all the main musicians involved in that, because ultimately they worked hard.
Yeah.
And I mean, whether the result is good or whether I'm giving a bad review or whatever, the thing is that a musician has worked on this thing. So whether it's, I'm not talking about the main singer and the composer, I'm even talking about the arranger or
Yeah.
some instrumentalist who's had a solo or something like that.
Yeah.
Like in my latest reviews, I've talked about a Punjabi wedding song where I found the violin and the acoustic guitar very nice in that section and all that. So I've mentioned them with the names of this thing. So and also production has to be taken, the melody,
Yeah.
the I mean, these things are again subjective. Like these are all based on personal assessment rather than any. I mean, the next person may say, may not agree with me on 100% of the things, but
Yeah.
and then so melody, the quality of lyrics, and there are songs which are done without an intention of having great lyrics, like they're fun songs basically.
Yeah.
So whether what the intention of the song is, you cannot expect a ghazal like poem like in every
In
kind of
everything. Right.
song. So one has to consider that what the subject is, the tunes, arrangements, and the memorability. Like that is again personal. It's a personal choice. Like I would say, yeah.
Yeah. It's so nice to hear that somebody is actually paying attention to all these things that we obsess like crazy over. Okay. So, how do you go about crafting really engaging articles around whether you are reviewing a show or you're giving an opinion? Like, I really like the rock and reel bit. I could relate to it
Okay.
instantly. So I felt like you definitely have a flair for keeping people, your readers, engaged over long form.
Okay.
How do you go about doing it? Do you have a process or sort
Okay,
of like,
there are two things. One is stories that I'm assigned,
yeah,
which is when the editor of a publication says that this is a story I want and this is what you need to do.
yeah,
In which case, I might at best suggest some tweaks here and there, but the basic idea remains the same. It's not my idea, it's their idea which is coming to me. And I might suggest that no, no, this may not work and this may work and all that. Can I add this and things like that? So, that way. The other way is my own blogs, or sometimes when I pitch an article to a publication, when I say that, look, okay, this is what I want to do, and then they will come up with something, you add this, you add that. So that kind of thing. So, or in my own blogs where nobody asks me and nobody, I mean, it's my this thing.
quick sidebar. Is your blog something you decided to start?
I started because there was a lot of things. It's again, it's something like a passion project, not
Yeah.
because I'm not getting paid for the blog. It's not a commercial thing. I mean, I can monetize it if I want to, but I'm just keeping it like as something that keeps me. It's like Riaz, like
Yeah.
you constantly listen to something and you do it because it helps you. And it also it helps certain people, like in terms of giving them publicity and all that. I used to
Yeah.
do the same thing, similar things for other publications, but because of changes after the
Yeah.
lockdown, that did not this thing. So I changed the nature of my blog. I made it a reviews blog now. So there again, like I choose what I want to review. Sometimes I go in for last week I attended 5 or 6 concerts. So what to do? I put all of them in one.
Yeah.
This thing.
Yeah. That was a
Yeah.
hectic one.
Yeah. Otherwise, to write on
Yeah.
each of them would have been. I mean, personally, this
Yeah.
thing. And who would read about six things at a time? Like I mean, even the readers,
Yeah.
they have limited this thing. Like in today's,
Attention
the readers have changed from what we used to have 20 years ago to what was there before my time.
Yeah.
To today. Today, it's all very quick.
And still we are doing long form right now.
Yeah.
So go figure.
No, I prefer the mid form in my
Yeah.
writing. I mean,
Yeah.
in terms of this thing, I do not like very long articles to write and even to read. Like that, unless it's a research process. Like if it's
Yeah.
something that talks about, it's like a thesis or something, then okay, then it serves its purpose. But for generally, like just to add words for the sake of this thing, so my ideal would be like around 1,200 words. That's my this
That's
thing.
pretty long as per some people's standards.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
no, I mean, I'm talking about a train story.
But yeah.
Maybe in a concert review, it would be about 700-800 words or something. Like
Yeah.
it depends on article to article. And I also like you asked me how I craft my articles and
Yeah.
make it engaging and all that. One of the things that came over time, like when I started writing many years ago, I used to use very complicated words just because it was everybody did it.
Yeah.
So there was snafu, there was jest, and whatever, whatever, whatever. Like all those
Juxtaposition.
juxtaposition
Yeah,
and
that's a
plurality, and,
favorite. Yeah.
and even ecosystem for that matter. It became very
The new one is democratizing.
yeah, yeah. So all those things, I mean, there were different words those days when I started, and then suddenly people said, "यार देखो तुम लिखते बहुत अच्छे हो, लेकिन कुछ चीजें समझ में नहीं आती है."
Right.
So somewhere down the line, I had that thing. It was a natural process that I said that, and I learned from one of my colleagues, a senior person, he said that the moment somebody does not understand one word, he'll flip to the next article. So you have to be careful that each and every reader understands each word. So that's when I started simplifying the language even more, and it was a process. Like first, I used to like using the word comprehend, but now I see that I understand. It's the same thing basically.
Yeah.
Here. So, but some people may not understand what comprehend means. I mean, you're looking at a cross section of readers, not necessarily this thing. And the other thing is that I try to explain some technical terms if at all I use them,
Yeah.
like. It happens like, I mean, things like for in example in a ghazal, you talk about a matla, which is the opening couplet and
Yeah.
all that. So you explain what that is, you explain what a makta is, which is the last couplet and all that. So as and when you write, so it makes it easier for people who do not understand
Yeah.
that. The ghazal listener will understand those things, but suppose
Yeah.
somebody is like, he's reading that article just because he likes the singer and probably likes the song, then to explain, so there should be a little bit of that kind of thing. Subjects wise, it depends. Like again, there are some pieces which demand a humor angle, like this rock and reel thing or that Mahindra blues thing and all that. Like,
Yeah.
so it again this thing. So there I be, but it cannot be done for everything. Like it,
Yeah.
and I like to change. Like I mean, per subject to subject, sometimes it gets into serious writing, sometimes it gets into just a little bit of uh, witticism or whatever, like attempted
Yeah.
witticism, and sometimes my song reviews are very short, because I mean a song is also like, it's a 3 minute 4 minute song, अभी उसके
Yeah.
ऊपर कितना analyze करेंगे, like
Yeah.
just a basic this thing. So
So, what you seem to be in love with your work. What are the things that you really look forward to, and then what are the things that you kind of dread in this whole process?
no, look forward to is that my biggest worry is events clashing. I
Yeah.
mean, because there are three things happening in a day, and I can't.
Yeah,
And
even yesterday was such a day.
yeah, there were
right? Yeah,
three. They
three
say
gigs.
somebody other thing. But yesterday I didn't go for anything, because this week I just decided to take a little bit of a step down. I mean, it
Yeah.
gets too much. Like you have a family and things like that, and other commitments and all that. So, thoda balance bhi karna.
So you do make an effort towards work-life balance.
Yeah, I try. But the field is such that it tends to get more towards work. But the daytimes, now that I'm working from home, I'm at
Yeah.
home the whole day. So I can relax as and when I want to. I can this thing. But previously it was not the case. When I was with Midday, it was as to get to office at around, we had a 11 o'clock meeting in the morning.
Yeah.
Uske baad, by the time I got back home, nobody knew. And my weekly off was always Saturday, but Saturday was never off because concerts happen on Saturday.
Right.
So, so that way.
A question just occurred to me. Would your organization pay for your attending the shows or your travel or accommodation? Sometimes if you have to go attend festivals in other cities.
Other cities they pay.
Yeah.
Here it is a lump sum this thing, but
Yeah.
when I was working with with Midday and all that, they had a conveyance this thing, so I could claim.
Yeah.
Here some publications pay for conveyance.
Uh-huh.
If it's a, I mean, suppose I was doing a project for with one publication last year, so they said, and it required some 7-8 visits.
Oh, wow.
And different parts of the town and all that. So they said you write a voucher for everything. So
Yeah.
in some cases they do. Normally it's a lump sum amount for
Tickets are on you.
tickets. It depends again. Sometimes it's the agency or the organization which gives. Sometimes I buy on my own and get it reimbursed. Sometimes I just go for shows, which and if I make sure that if I don't write on them, then I don't. I mean, it's my own expense. Like
Yeah.
I go as a normal visitor. I do write later on and all that.
Yeah.
So in the sense that I attend a lot of shows, and there too I'm making some notes. because though I'm not assigned to write, and I may not even put it in my blog, like, I mean, it's not in the mind, unless there's something that I suddenly think that, okay, it deserves a blog.
Yeah.
But later on, after 6 months or so, it may come in handy. Like
Yeah.
somewhere when you're doing a piece on that kind of trend, like, and you say that, okay, this fellow did this. You suppose you forget what they performed that time. So it's there in the notes that goes onto
A
my
very
computer.
helpful, yeah, habit.
So
That's nice.
also things like when you go to a concert, noting the time, the starting time, the interval time, and all that. These, I mean, these small things that get into those notes. Like,
Okay. So, okay, let's talk about the Indian music industry.
okay,
According to you, how would you define it?
uh, look, India has got such a large, I mean, cross section of people in music that
Uh-huh.
it's very difficult to sort of categorize it. Of course, film music is the primary this thing, but that has gone down over the past couple of
Yeah.
years for a few reasons. One is the quality of film music has overall gone down. Even the film musicians are doing independent projects and stuff like that. They've started their own labels or
Yeah.
this thing. Number two, the cinema halls are not attracting, except if it's a big blockbuster
Yeah.
and all that. So that is there, but there is a lot of audiences for different kinds of music.
Yeah.
So people say that this and this genre is dying and all that. I don't think so,
Yeah.
because every time I attend a show, a ghazal show, some artists they have full houses. Likewise, classical music.
I really never bought into that. Classical music, it's gonna outlive everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, because you go to the small towns, the kind of
Yeah.
this thing that they have, and even if you go to places like Dadar Matunga Cultural Center
Yeah.
or Veer Savarkar Auditorium and all that, so these are venues. In
Yeah.
places in the bigger auditoriums, they probably go by the name and the star, this thing, the star value and all that. Like, but there are a lot of younger musicians in the classical this thing, and there's a lot of talent.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of talent which is not recognized as much as they should be and not promoted as they should be.
Yeah.
Which is part of the this thing, because people look for image and all that, like saleability of the artist. That's what, from an industry perspective, that is what they look at. But there are certain artists who are very, very talented, and unless they develop their own niche following and all that,
Yeah.
then they do not really make it into the big this thing. So even in independent music, there's a lot of talent. There's a lot of people just attempting to be there because it's a in thing
Yeah.
there. I mean, and like I know of this thing. They are not really their songs are not this thing. They sometimes produce anything and all that, but there are people backing them, or they have the financial ability
Yeah.
to promote themselves and talk about this many views and all that. Like, so that thing. So it's a mixed this thing, but definitely a lot of the good thing about this independent thing is a lot of different genres are being discovered.
Yeah.
Folk fusion, for instance. A lot of folk music has remained within the confines of the states, like, but now it's traveling across. Except for Punjabi music, which was all
Yeah.
over, people did not really. I mean, there was a little bit of Rajasthani and some this thing, select audience, but now people from here and there are listening to it. A lot of South music is going. OTT is also helping,
Yeah.
because certain films have a lot of South Indian music is becoming popular in other parts
Yeah.
because of this whole this thing. So it's all getting the right. So that's how the industry stands today. But again, there are a lot of things that are not there as it was before. That thing about artist and repertoire, A&R, what they
A&R.
call, yeah. So that was a very strong function in a music label.
Hmm.
Today it's like it's hardly existent in the way it used to be. Like,
I think today musicians have to pretty much do
yeah,
it all
yeah,
themselves.
themselves.
And then once they reach there, then maybe the label will look at them.
Yeah. Also, PR plays a very important role today,
Yeah.
and some musicians get through because of that, and some musicians stay a little this thing. So all that is there, but those are things that one has to accept and probably adjust according to what this thing
Yeah.
happens.
So, like every industry goes through a sort of a development arc where it's getting more organized and regulated. Like a big chunk of our industry is
Yeah.
unorganized. Majority.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't remember the statistic. I'd read it in some report. Where do you think we are on that arc?
Where in the sense that
In terms of getting regulated or organized, more businesses coming up to help with basically the discovery of these artists and for the music's getting a
I
larger
think
audience.
look, if things go right the way they are going now, we went through a phase when 2 3 years nothing was happening because of
Yeah.
the lockdown. Before that, things were picking up, and then suddenly, but now things
Yeah.
are picking up again.
Again.
So there are two things that are blossoming. One is that everybody is the one blessing that happened during those 2 3 years when we were down is that many people were at home.
Yeah.
That made them think in terms of quality, in terms of producing good music. And a lot of
Yeah.
people have been doing that. Otherwise, it's the musician's life normally is going and attending your commitments, you're traveling around. A lot of time is going, especially if you're a live performer, you keep
Yeah.
traveling and all that. So, and then you're in the studio a lot of time and retakes and all those things and things like that. So time goes there,
Yeah.
and so when one was home, people had a chance to sort of think in terms of what to produce, and a lot of that is being seen now today in
Yeah.
terms of quality of songs that have generally come up, and also like in terms of live shows, because so much is happening because there was nothing 2 years back. Now every day, and plus venues like NMACC and
Yeah.
even NCPA has always been there, but NMACC, because of that, every day they have this thing, and these night spots that happen like Veranda and
Yeah.
Bonobo and Blue Pop Cafe,
Yeah.
these things. So they're giving exposure to artists. Uh, if it continues that way, then we can see. But again, like streaming is good in terms of exposure, but artists are not making money because of streaming.
Yeah.
It's very little. In fact, this is a global phenomenon, like
Yeah.
which has happened, but it gives some exposure to the artists and all that. But let's see how it goes. It's still, we are there, we are heading there, but it will still take some time. A lot of things have to be streamlined,
Yeah.
and artists have to be more. I mean, one thing I noticed, like, I mean, this is a major challenge because, I get so much of music in terms of singles and this thing. I'm talking about different genres.
Yeah.
Like, very often songs are released, they create a temporary buzz
Yeah.
about 10 days, 12 days.
Yeah.
Everybody is and all that.
Yeah.
Like, and then after that, 6 months later, only time that they probably surface is when some award ceremony will say that, okay, this guy has got the best independent or best guitarist and all that. Then suddenly
Yeah.
they'll this thing, people will talk about it again. It's on social media and again it will disappear. That's what's happening with.
We've gone through this ourselves.
This
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
so and that shouldn't discourage artists. That's what I feel,
Yeah.
because it's a normal thing कि यार पिछले बार इतना अच्छा गाना बजाया था, लोगों को पसंद आया, लेकिन चला नहीं. There are persons, and then he'll not bring another song. It's probably that's the thing of that, because there's so much of clutter
Yeah.
today. The main problem, and that happened with indie pop also. If one looks at why indie pop went down in the 2000s, or with the ghazal wave, like I mean, these are actual jokes that went around the industry when ghazals were very popular in the early 80s till about 86, 87.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it came down. I mean, then film music with a lot of melody came. Like you had your Anand Milans and your Nadeem Shravans and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, popular music. Like
Yeah.
everybody is not into that kind of music, but
Yeah.
they had a big audience on their own.
Definitely.
Before Rahman took over. So when ghazals came down, they said that everybody with a shawl and a harmonium wanted to become a ghazal singer.
Yeah.
Likewise, with when indie pop, like everybody who could dance to the bhangra or could put themselves in a video with some fancy clothing,
Yes.
they can become an indie pop star.
Yeah.
So that was what happened, and there were too many of them. So it was always clutter, too many people, and
Yeah.
then the whole this thing, which is happening now also. So one has to
Yeah.
manage the clutter. The real ones will really survive. Artists who are long lasting, kitne hain, देखना, that all depends. It requires a lot of dedication, and that's where constant live shows, constant this thing. Music is such a thing. One day you're up, next day you can be down. One day for many years you struggle, suddenly you might be
Yeah.
this thing. It's like there's no hard and fast.
How about the businesses in and around? Sorry to use the buzzword ecosystem
No, I
around
meant only for
music.
writers.
Yeah. How have you seen the ecosystem evolve around music till in the past couple of decades? That's I think mainly when we went from torrent downloads,
Huh.
and then some of us okay listen downloads, and buying CDs, and for a while there what pen drives also.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that there were people who were like, yeah, I'll buy that pen drive. To streaming. So, how do you think locally, in Indian context, the ecosystem has evolved?
Look, the best time in terms of commercially for this thing was when cassettes and CDs were
Yeah,
manufactured, because there was a particular quantity that one was assured of.
yeah,
कि इतना बिक रहा है. It wasn't just today people claim they are stars and all that, but those days you actually knew this sold this much and all, because the industry had a figure, and through the stores also you
yeah.
got that this thing, and even the companies also, they were organized labels which promoted this, and a lot of small labels also. They were the big labels and they were the smaller labels.
And everyone was incentivized to push the
Yeah,
sale.
push the sale.
Yeah.
Then somewhere down the line, the labels started, because of the whole change in technology. Like suddenly CDs came down and people started downloading and all that. And first it was some either paid downloads, or there was
Pirated.
pirated this thing, or just copying files and this thing. Copying existed even before, like I mean,
Yeah.
cassette time pay. I mean, we as teenagers, we used to go to send somebody had a record of some this thing. We used to give them a blank cassette and they used to tape
Or
for us.
record from the
Yeah,
radio.
or from the radio. Yeah. So those kind of things were there. So that this thing. But now it's become so this thing. Now a lot of music is free, and plus this whole forwarding culture of this thing. And it's, I mean, everybody does it. So there's no way to stop it or say that okay, this is piracy or whatever like that.
Yeah.
Because today you say artists themselves want publicity. They'll send a link first thing कि मैंने ये गाना release किया. Please share it. Share it means actually they are losing a lot of this thing, because everybody, the whole world is getting to hear it free. They're
Yeah.
not making any money, but they're looking for in terms of getting some exposure out of that.
And then landing a gig or
Yeah.
maybe a recording session. Yeah.
So yeah, exactly. So and gigs are where the money is, like in terms of compared to what the streaming and all that is.
Yeah.
So in terms of recorded music, there is the ecosystem is in a pretty this thing shape, except for maybe like the only physical format which is doing well is the vinyl this thing.
Yes, vinyl
but
is
that
back
too,
up.
no, but there too it is a very limited
Niche.
audience.
Yeah.
It's niche because everybody cannot afford a. I mean, you can have a small record player.
Yeah.
6,000-7,000 ka average thing, but to get records is like nothing less than 2,000-2,500 new records. Second hand records, like people do not sell them too much, like
Yeah.
so it's got a very niche this thing, but people buy. There is a market for that.
Yeah.
So but otherwise there is this thing. So live is where the whole scene is, or in terms of and that's why musicians also like besides actual songs and all that, they get into, this has always been there, they get into jingles, they get into background music for
Yeah.
ads and all that, OTT and all that. So this is a some musicians manage to balance them both, because they keep recording good new music and
Yeah.
do all this to earn that extra this thing. But
But I think there has been a fundamental shift that now in the chain of where the song is produced till it reaches the audience's ear, somewhere in between, the incentive has changed. Now there is no more. There's one middle party where their incentive is not to push
Okay.
the music or the sale. It's to get as many people to upload content as possible. And I mean, at least streaming services, they also have their own content, which they are pushing.
Okay.
So there is essentially the people who are uploading and essentially giving it out for free, they are competing against the platform's own content that is heavily pushed.
Yeah.
So it's gone topsy-turvy.
It's gone topsy-turvy.
Yeah.
So one has to wait and watch. Like people, I mean, I hope people realize from their mistakes. And now with AI coming in, that's going to be another this thing. Like, so of course, I don't know how that's going to. It's too early to talk about what impact it will have. वो जब आएगा तभी one will get to know.
How about what impact it's had on writing?
I,
In specifically music journalism, what can
no,
you...
I don't think there has been. Like, I never thought about it. Like, so obviously, I don't know about others, but
Yeah.
in terms of look, we've been, as I said, when the web came, there were challenges and all that, but we crossed that. When TV channels came, we crossed that. So AI also, we will do something
But
to.
do you think it's more of an opportunity or a threat?
Till we get opportunities, I wouldn't know anything. Like,
Yeah.
right now, there's nobody who's saying, like, at least I'm not. But anyway, like, they look for the younger people. That again, like, when one crosses a certain age, the people that approach you are different kinds of this thing. We don't get certain opportunities at the younger people because they're more technologically savvy. They're more up to the date with this thing. And I shouldn't be complaining also. It's the way things
Yeah.
move on. Like, so.
You
Yeah.
seem to be at peace with it.
Yeah, I mean, what's the point? I'd
Yes.
rather do what I'm good at rather than think of getting into areas where I'll have to again, like.
That is refreshing. Because we have read so much anxiety around AI is coming and taking our jobs. Like, has it happened already though?
No, it's not nothing.
Not yet.
Not yet. At least not in terms of journalism. In terms of music, there is a lot of people are saying that things are going to be very bad and all. But abhi tak to it has not. There have been minor flourishes and all that. But there was in fact a meeting of the industry people some days back where they talked about how to conquer this demon called AI and all that. Like,
Oh, demon, eh?
no, that's the word that I'm using.
Oh,
They did
okay.
use that. So, I mean, but when I met those people, that's the impression that they gave me, that there's something that big coming and like which is going to this thing. So they are taking their steps, what they want to do in terms of yeah.
Okay. The live performance scene over the past 4 decades.
Okay.
How, because you have been active and you have been reporting on it.
Okay.
So how has it become more denser, or I mean, take us through it. What's
Okay.
the arc? What's the
Okay.
arc?
I'll
that it
go
took?
back since my childhood, which was I mean, maybe a little more than 5 decades. So when I was young, I used to go to all these concerts with my parents, as I said. Like, so they were limited in number, but they happened regularly. There were a particular period, and slowly that started increasing. So when earlier and this is from what I read also from people from that generation, like the 60s and earlier on and all that, like there was nothing like a star system and all that. And film music had its own concerts where they used to call the singers and with an orchestra and all that, and a couple of actors would come and do their
Oh.
this thing and all that. Like, and Hindustani classical had a lot of people, but nobody was called a star. The star system started in the 1970s when certain people got I mean, they started getting recognized as this thing. There was because Ravi Shankar ji went abroad and came down. So when he came, there was a big aura about
Yeah.
this thing and all. And he's done a lot. I mean, like he's in terms of his contribution to music as such. I'm not talking about only Indian music, classical
Yeah.
music, but but slowly certain names began to be recognized as big ticket items and all. So that thing happened. And then ghazals also, they used to have these packed halls, like so there was always, but again it was still the 80s and all. It was kind of limited to and they had different audiences for this.
Yeah.
Unlike today, where people are more eclectic in their choice. That's because of the exposure they get.
Yeah.
Those days, they were very specific. A Hindustani classical audience had a different kind of set of people. Even,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that, I mean, the basic people remain the same, but I'm talking about more people who try to listen to different kind of genres.
Yeah.
and ghazals would have their own audiences and stuff like that. And then, like after that, there was this whole pop scene, which is when the live music became a little more extended. Like, I mean, uh, general public started enjoying these live shows. Till then, it was a sort of fixed audience in terms of people who had an understanding of classical or Carnatic music. They went for those shows, or who had an understanding of ghazals. There too, there were two levels in ghazals. Like, there were those who used to go, who would go for the poetry, and there were those who just went because they liked the songs.
Yeah.
But that again, everybody did not have the taste for that kind of songs. Like, I mean, there were people who liked faster, catchier stuff and all that. But with pop and with film music again coming back in the 90s, then this thing, and then that's when the organizers also started getting big time into
Yeah.
the music scene. So you had these organizers who would sponsor big shows and have these big so and so nights and all that. Like, and so that kept on increasing.
Yeah.
And Daler Mendi was a rage in the live
Yes.
shows. Like, I mean, everybody used to go crazy. Like, I mean, he had that some kind of energy, and everybody used to dance, and they used to throw tables around to the side, and like it was just so.
He was the metal scene back then.
Yeah. So and other people also attracted, like I mean, Sonu Nigam had a few big shows those days and
Yeah.
all that. And yeah, so that happened, and then this whole thing about international acts coming in. Uh, for rock music acts have been coming in since the 70s actually.
Yeah.
But the 80s
Even
was,
jazz musicians.
yeah, jazz
right?
musicians.
Yeah.
They had the Jazz Yatra in 78
Yeah.
and all that. So that was another scene. Like, again, jazz had another audience. Like, it
Yeah.
was like a ghazal wala may not go to a jazz this thing, but today they
Yeah.
go. Today
Yeah.
people will try to experiment with this thing. So they had the Jazz Yatra initially, and then they had different rock musicians coming. Like 80s were there was Wishbone Ash, there was Police. Police was the first to come
Yeah.
in 1980. Then Uriah Heep, and later on it came down. And then the whole thing, like when Michael Jackson came, then it was a very big this thing. Then later on Roger Waters and all that. So there were people people who were willing to sponsor and all that.
Yeah.
And most of these acts, they were already past their prime in the West. Like, but they still came and they had an audience here.
Yeah.
And the audience was mostly the older people who could afford those prices and all that.
What would you say was like the size of the audience?
It depended. Like Roger Waters had got about something like 25,000 people.
Whoa.
Yeah. The biggest was Iron Maiden in Bangalore, which was
Yeah.
about 40,000
Huh.
those days. And
In when it 2008 was it when they came to Mumbai? 2007 or 8? Iron Maiden.
I don't know. I remember the Bangalore show, which was a little earlier than that.
Yeah.
I could not attend the Bombay show because of some reason. I don't know. But I'm talking about the Bangalore show.
Bangalore
which
one was
the biggest
definite,
one. Michael Jackson also had a fairly big, about 22,000 or something like that. So they had the big this thing, and the majority of the crowd was the elder lot, and they, because they had grown up on the music, number
Yeah.
one, and then that's they targeted because they had the paying power also.
So around what year or decade did Indian rock kind of start properly?
80s was when it got through Rock Machine, which later which became Indus Creed, was when they started in 86, 87. And by 88, when they released their album, that was when they got this thing, a little bit of international exposure and all that. Rock has been there since the 70s or even earlier. We had bands in the 60s also, Atomic Forest and Savages and all that. Like,
Wow.
so these were all there in the 60s, and people like Bidu was in a rock group, like he called the Trojans. And then everybody broke up, and he started calling himself the Lone Trojan before he went abroad. So so those days, like, and Louis Banks was in Calcutta, so jazz scene was he was looking at things there. He and Blas Gonsalves and Pam Gray and all. So 70s there were again a lot of bands, rock bands, which this thing. But 80s was when they got this thing. Early 90s was when Parikrama came, and mid 90s was when Pentagram and
Millennium.
Millennium, early 90s again. Parikrama, Millennium, Agni,
Huh.
and then Pentagram.
Agni was like
Yeah,
powerhouse, right?
powers.
Yeah.
So they came those days,
Yeah.
and the Indian rock, like again they had their phases. Like later on, Zero became very popular
Yeah.
in the early 2000s, and today you have a lot of good groups. And then this whole thing about again trends started changing. It wasn't only English rock.
Yeah.
You started mixing languages and all that, and it started actually with Junoon in
Yeah. Oh,
Pakistan. Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
So they did that Sufi rock thing, and then like here, Hindi rock we
No
had.
drums, just tabla.
Yeah, tabla,
Junoon.
Junoon,
Yeah.
yeah. So and they had that Hindi, I mean Hindi Urdu vocals and
Yeah.
guitars and all that, and then here Euphoria did something like that, and
Yeah.
then like so you had all those mixes, and then like today you have Parvaz and all who are doing, and then you have regional rock now.
Yeah.
It's widened because you have Agam, you have Avial and all. I mean they're not
Yeah.
rock the way one this thing, but they've got a lot of rock influences and
Yeah.
um,
Alt rock
yeah,
and
alt rock and whatever. So that's the way that scene has gone. It's like changed. Um,
and then the jazz scene.
Jazz scene again started with the Yatra, but
Yeah.
and as I said, parallelly, previously
Yeah.
Calcutta was the jazz capital of India.
Yeah.
And then, like, I mean, besides Louis and the others I mentioned, Raz and Pam, there was Carlton Keto on guitar,
Yeah.
who was very big those days. And people from Bombay, they used to play the Joe Pereira, who used to be known as Jazzy Joe. He was, yeah.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of musicians. So here in Bombay, a lot of Goan musicians came and played. Before that, there was Chic Chocolate and what was that other? So they came, and Lorna, she used to sing English
Yeah.
jazz, this thing. Then she became Goan and all that. So uh, and then later on with the Jazz Yatra, they had this thing about going abroad and all that. Jazz India Sextet was found, Louis Banks, and they did a fusion thing. Fusion also became like, fusion was another parallel genre,
Yeah.
which started with actually. Now fusion can be two ways. It could be either there's a lot of this thing. Some call it crossover and all that. Like because what Raviji did was essentially playing classical music, and they played Western classical. Yehudi Menuhin.
Yeah.
So that was a sort of interaction, collaboration rather than a fusion.
Yeah.
But with Shakti and Anand Shankar, fusion
Yeah.
was when it started. So and jazz, then later on they started getting big acts those days. I mean the quality of acts that came from the Jazz Yatra was really this thing. And it was all because of the main person there, Niranjan Jhaveri. He had the contacts and all. He used to go abroad and scout for these acts. But today it's I mean, there are regular jazz shows. There are a lot of jazz in smaller venues.
Yeah.
But again, like um, it gets over a period of time. It they need a little more musicians to enter this thing. Like because Blue Bop, again, you have these people, and they come. You can tend to see the same people
Yeah.
off and on.
Venues wise, what would you say before lockdown and now? Has especially with regards to Mumbai venues, have things gotten better or worse, or it's sort of a mixed thing? Like qualitatively, perhaps it has gotten better in a certain aspect, and otherwise options have gone down in other ways.
Look, before lockdown, there were places like Blue Frog,
Yeah.
which was like one of the best venues for that kind of music. That shut down quite before lockdown, actually.
Yeah.
But then lockdown things shut this thing. Some of these places had opened before lockdown, like this. Bonobo has been there for some time.
Yeah.
This thing had just opened, Blue Bob Cafe. But there again, venues are two types. One is the auditorium venues, and one is the club venues. Like,
Yeah.
so
Open air, I don't think it is.
open air, there is MMRDA was there, but that's only for big concerts.
Yeah.
Like otherwise, or you have these for specific concerts. You have things like Bandra Amphitheatre
Yeah.
or
Chitrakoot is entirely gone.
Chitrakoot. I have not heard of anything for a long
Yeah,
time. They used to
same.
have Independence Rock at one
Yeah.
point of time. Yeah. So, but open air Rang Bhavan was this thing. I mean, Rang Bhavan, that's another story. Like the amount of times I've gone there for shows and all. It was a wonderful venue for
Yeah.
this thing. And but today you have primarily these kind. NMACC has uh, had some good shows, but again, NMACC, I feel that they have a grand theater, and they have these two small these things. Now, two small gets sold out pretty fast because they're 220 and 100 seaters,
Yeah.
basically. So it's not difficult to sell them out, and they get very this thing. What they're missing is something like Tata Theatre, which is around, or Nehru Center, which is around 1,000 capacity and all, where a lot of shows can happen. And Grand Theatre, like they might just put down, open the shows to the lower section, but they're wasting a lot in terms of the upper space and all that. Like if they do that, I don't know about any such shows I've done, but uh, Royal
Do you
Opera House
think
is there.
the type of venues are also influencing what genres get more push versus some other genres?
Uh, Look, that has always been there. Like some genres are, I mean, some venues specialize in certain genres.
Yeah.
Like if you look at the auditoriums, like Nehru Center, you rarely see any jazz or that kind of this thing. Western classical, there's only one place, which is NCPA.
NCPA, yeah.
Yeah, or Prithvi, now they have that
Or
small.
that Russian Culture Center, do
That
they?
is again a very small this thing.
Yeah.
It's a very few programs,
Yeah.
and once in a while they have something and all that. But it's not a venue that one can say in terms of as a regular classical venue. They have other
Okay.
things also there.
Yeah.
But jazz, you will probably get a few smaller acts in this place. This one is Bal Gandharva Auditorium. They've had some good jazz shows, and they also had. Mughal Azam, and they've had a bit of variety. They've had N. Rajaman classical. They've had this Carnatic singer. What's his name? The T.M. Krishna.
T.M. Krishna.
T.M.
Yeah.
Krishna. He was there, and then they had this Mahindra Folk Roots Festival and all that. This
Yeah.
that thematic show that they had. Royston Abel had directed it. So that is one this thing. But otherwise, you have they've got their specialities. Like Saint Andrews is known primarily for English Western pop,
Yeah.
stroke a bit of jazz. They've had jazz festivals and all that, but again, like jazz, mainly it's at NCPA or now this place, NMACC to a small
Yeah.
extent. And Shanmukhananda is again Karnataka and Hindustani
Yeah.
specialities, or film music. They have a lot of film music nights there. Then places down south, you have, north, up north Bombay, this Bhaidas and all. They have certain
And
ghazal
then the
shows
the anti-socials and
yeah, those are the
social.
again those are the clubbish venues where they
Yeah.
have a lot of independent music and all. Anti-social is more towards the, I mean, it has jazz, it has independent indie music and all that different mixes. It's a slightly larger venue compared to the others. Like the
Yeah.
others are more restaurant and chatter and things like that.
And so those would typically be more of singer-songwriter, solo performers, veranda
No,
sort
no,
of place.
they have small bands,
Yeah.
but it gets a little cramped.
Yeah.
Like you have a
I mean,
stage.
it's Mumbai, so
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, but when people come, they usually prefer to talk and over the drinks and all that, which is fine. But when the music is not really the first primary the singer, and this is happens in the West also. Like most of
Yeah.
these blues bars in the US, that's we had a joke the other day when these guys came, Rudy Bolong and. From he has
Yeah,
his
yeah.
new group now. He was with, I mean,
Yeah, Rudy and
the Cool
the
Cats.
Cool Cats,
Yeah.
yeah.
So he was doing
Huh.
this 5 member 6 member group with two guests at NMACC. And I have known him like for many years offline. First time I was actually meeting him, like because we've spoken on the phone, we've interacted on mail and all that. But since he's in Shillong and in Mahindra Blues, I somehow never got to meet him. This time we chatted a bit before the show and all that. So he said that I don't know what, yeah, like people are listening to blues without any alcohol going around. So, I said, get used to it.
Let's talk about awards.
Okay.
You've been on several selection committees.
Some,
Yeah.
yeah.
What role do you think awards play in discovery of new artists, or just generally getting the audience aware, or helping a certain artist, really take off from that point? And how do you think artists should think about awards?
Okay. Look, awards have been there since for many these things. Like, I mean, in the film world, you had Filmfare Awards, which had a music section. So since we are talking about music primarily, so you had these best music director, best lyricist, best male playback singer, best playback female playback singer.
Yeah.
Likewise, we've had different. There are certain awards which are, I mean, um, things like JIMA.
Huh.
Or today you have independent awards like Indies awards were there
Yeah.
before, and
Toto?
yeah,
Yeah.
Toto is there. Then the Clef Awards and all that. Like
Yeah.
so, Clef is for independent music. They're certain for film music, and they're different. This thing. Now awards give recognition to the artist, which
Yeah.
is good. The only thing is that I mean, this happens with all awards. Like I mean, there is a panel of about 10 or 12 people on the jury. So in many cases, it's a very fair judgment. But sometimes it so happens that you never know what this thing is. Sometimes a jury, they also go on the basis of what is popular and all that, so that they overlook certain people because they think that अच्छा ये गाना चल रहा है, तो इसको देना चाहिए कुछ ज़्यादा points. So
Oh.
most of them have a score of 10. So some artists, because their song is, and it's also like there's this thing, the awards are also yearly based.
Yeah.
Like it's like say from from October 1st to September 30th.
Yeah.
So sometimes songs are released in September last year or October last year or November last year, and the people have forgotten about them.
Yeah.
So now suddenly when you're judging sometime in after October this year, you tend to give some of the recent songs the better marks and all that. So those kind of things, how they this thing, but ultimately, they all go to some kind of an agency which looks at monitors all these things and all that. So most of them are fair. Some cases again what needs to be done is to ensure that the most entries come in, because certain award system they have specific entries coming in, some people just not sending their entries, and then later on they said we never got to know about it, like so that's why we didn't send our entries. Or some people they send too many entries, like I know in one particular award, like one singer had sent her entry for 14 categories and across some 6 genres, and she was actually only maximum 2 genres, like in terms of her style of singing, but she sent for everything, and like people were accepting and giving points also. She didn't win, that was a different matter, but people try their luck. So
So, how should artists, where should they prioritize? Is it something they should aspire to?
no, awards is something that if they come, they come. I don't
So
think that should be
consequential.
I don't think that should be the aim of artists to work for awards.
Yeah.
Primary thing is to work for an audience that I mean, they all say it on paper that my fans are my best friends and all that.
Yeah.
But then why do you think of awards so much if the fans are the best friends? Be happy with the fans. That's what
Yeah.
this thing. If you get an award, nothing like it. Certain awards do attract some kind of prestige, which is like, I mean, if somebody gets a Grammy award, then of course it's a this thing. And somebody like Ricky Cage, who's got 3 Grammy awards, it's an achievement. Like he's on the top league of musicians today from India. For somebody who was not known much before, and who's not part of the popular scene as such.
Yeah.
So, but people know him because he's got 3 awards. Likewise with Vishwamohan Bhatt when he got the award many years back. So these are Grammy awards. But here within India also, to get a JIMA award or to get whatever, like some other big awards, they are they used to have these Channel V awards before.
Yeah.
Where I was on the jury, so called. Like, so I also gave my 10 marks and all those days. So those days getting a Channel V award was quite a big thing. And later on, MTV started something called the MTV Emmys,
Yeah.
which was it was a tie-up between MTV and Indian Music Industry, IMI, which is
Yeah.
a major body up there. So that's why they called it Emmys, just to rhyme with Grammys. But those were prestigious awards. So if you get these prestigious awards, then it's something. But to say that I'm going to do this song because I want an Emmy, that's not the. I don't think that should be the this thing. If
Yeah, it feels very obvious like when you say it, but and at the same time we see it happen all the time. So, can we talk about Grammys? Like,
Okay. Yeah.
Are you aware of the what qualifiers do they have? As in, who can win a Grammy?
No, it's a long process. it goes through, like, one has to send. They have this system of sending entries to the Recording Academy. It's called NARAS. There's a full form, like whatever, national or something.
Yeah.
So one sends the entries there. There it is sort of shortlisted.
Okay.
And once they do that,
But absolutely all international artists can.
yeah, all international artists can, but there is a certain time period and a certain conditions that have, like 75% of your album has to be original. If it's a song, there are certain conditions and all that. Like, so they have these specific conditions that one has to, the second time period, of course, from release between this phase to this phase, it has to fall under that particular category. And so, which is why Indian people, they generally send it to either the world music category or to the folk or something like that, those kind of things, or children's albums, which are general. Yeah, there we have had winners in children.
Oh.
Yeah. So these are the certain categories that we cannot. I mean, some Indian act cannot. I mean, they might send their entries to the rock category, but the chances of them getting accepted are minimal. Like, I mean, they, because the American market, they Grammys again, the people on the selection, this thing, they are more twisted towards what is happening in the US. So they'll
Right.
know, or the UK for that matter, like, or
Yeah.
whatever, like the
So
international.
Europe, UK, US,
Yeah.
Canada.
Yeah. So basically, they look at acts from there. And if you're suddenly going to in front of a what do you call it, this Foo Fighters, you're going to say that I want to win a Grammy, then obviously there's very little chance of getting through that top five. So it goes through that process, and then they have this nominations and all that, and then it's a different this thing than the Recording Academy this thing. But uh, apparently, like, what there is this feeling that a lot of people are more people are getting in this thing. A lot of people in India, what they do, they send their entries to Grammys, and then they announce that we have been selected, and everybody has got, we are being considered. They get a letter.
Yeah.
So based on that letter, they'll put out on social media. When that is not actually the case, unless you get a nomination, then.
Yeah.
But till then, everybody has made their this thing. Ki, I've been this thing, and people think they've already got Grammys. There are people who have actually gone, including senior musicians, who have said that we've been selected as to be nominated and all, when it's actually that shortlisting procedure. They're in that selection procedure. So there is a particular this thing, but getting a Grammy is, of course, like a great this thing. So there's a feeling that a lot of people are getting their number one, number two. When I was interviewing Ricky last time, before he won the third Grammy, it was between the second and the third, and it was for the story that I wrote on this whole procedure and all that. So he said that even in the past, a lot of people sent entries, but they didn't make a noise about it. Today, because of social media, everybody is like saying that we're the same, and people are thinking, but actually it's been there for many years that people send entries, those who know the process, and they just have to know the date. They have to get that there's a form that has to be filled, which is available online now. Previously previously it was more difficult because of this thing, but today once it's become online, they have to fill that form, and then it goes to a selection. Like, so he and Rahman, I think, and Vishwamohan Bhatt, these are the only three people who are based in India who got Grammys. The others, Raviji was staying abroad, Zakir Bhai is staying in the US,
Yeah.
and whoever else, like, and all these are there certain people who got for children's song or children's album and all that.
Okay, let's talk streaming.
Okay.
Specifically, playlist curation.
Okay.
You've been involved with playlist.
Okay. I don't want to give details about this thing, because that's again like the thing. But what the work I do is that I curate a playlist for a site which doesn't believe in algorithms and this thing, like in general, like surveys and kind of this thing. It's more on based on a person's taste of
Okay,
what
it's
should
proper
be.
curation.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's I send them songs, and they have certain things to this thing. So two things I keep in mind, and this thing is, I mean, my base is primarily Indian music,
Yeah.
or music from the subcontinent.
Okay.
So which is Pakistan and Bangladesh,
Sri Lanka?
Nepal and Sri Lanka.
Um,
So, but the focus is on Indian. 80% would be that, and rest 20 would be this thing. So that's when I started discovering a lot of other music from. Like I was not clued into Bangladeshi music, and there also I have this thing. I've told them very clearly there are certain languages I don't understand, so I cannot curate in that. If you find somebody, fine. Otherwise, this thing, like there's no point in me curating a Telugu thing because I don't understand the language. My mother
Right.
tongue is Kannada. I can curate Kannada, so I did curate in Kannada. So that way I told them that. So now curation, and there two things. One is whether if it's a new product, then I try to put in whatever is there. Like whether even if it's a song is not great, if it's new and if the artist is well known and whatever. Or in the old, I was very selective, like
Yeah.
what was has worked in the past and all that. So that is the way I used to do this. I have been doing this.
What are your personal qualifiers for what goes on the playlists?
Again, the quality of the same that I do for reviews. Like reviews,
Right.
I have a rating, na 3 star,
Yeah.
4 star, or whatever. If something is good enough to be there, it's like again, it's subjective. But
Right.
there, one also has to keep a little more of the public taste in mind because there might be a song that people might, and this is for a foreign this thing. Like so, they have an audience which has a specific taste and all that. An Indian community where people listen to a lot of Indian music. So you have to keep in mind their this thing. So there they listen to a lot of Punjabi music and ghazals and all that. So that has to also be.
Right. What's the most heartening and disheartening thing that you've experienced in the Indian music scene so far?
Good question. Heartening thing is well, it's actually quite a tough question. I'm trying to think now because there's so many things that that. But Indians winning at the Grammys, yes, that's something that I get happy about because again, like if you look at the world music category, you're competing against African music and Chinese music and all that. Now, on what basis we got, I don't know, because it's very difficult again to compare African with Indian with Chinese and
Yeah.
all that. But मिल गया तो it's something that
The world music category is a bit
it's
unfair
it's un,
because
yeah.
you're essentially putting majority of the
It's
world
basically
in.
anybody who's not American, who's not English,
Exactly.
and who's
Yeah.
not classical and who's not jazz, we are into world music. Like
Yeah.
so, just like we for indie,
Yeah.
we have the same category. Na? Like anything who's not Bollywood, who's not film, who's not
Yeah.
ghazal, who's not classical, becomes indie
Indie.
today. So yeah, that is something. Then. Certain things like certain shows, like announcement of certain shows, like especially when Roger Waters came for the first time, I was really excited. When Rolling Stones came, so these announcements they've always had kind of this thing. Disheartening things for me when missing out on shows because one of my jobs involved a lot of travel, and they used to purposely send me to another city when some show was happening here. Not deliberately, but it just happened that I missed shows in Bombay because of that. I missed Foreigner, which came here. I missed America, which came here, and Iron Maiden, the Bombay one, as I said. So that way, and there was this thing like I was deputed in Bangalore once, and Metallica was supposed to play in Bangalore and Gurgaon.
Yeah.
So that week they said I was to go to Delhi for some work. So I booked my tickets in Gurgaon and
But
they
they
cancelled
never.
the show.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was in Bangalore till 2 days back and they came and
Yeah.
played in Bangalore. So those kind of things have been disheartening. But if you're talking about in the industry as a whole, what's disheartening is again like the fact that a lot of music does not get the kind of mileage. I mean, this is a general thing. I notice a lot of talent here and there, which I feel should be given more attention. Or there's too much of what do you call it? People wanting to promote specific types of music and neglecting the other types of genres. Like um,
There's a bit of gaming.
the
That,
gaming is happening. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, there is a bit of gaming,
Yeah.
quite a bit of gaming. I mean, like, and all these things are there. Like, I mean, so, but that again, it happens everywhere. But
Yeah.
here, being a vast this thing, like you have different styles and all that. Now people are talking about folk fusion, but previously they did not get so much. And there's also this thing about people listening to music just because it's a passion to listen to that music, like Sufi music, for instance. It became popular because Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan Sahab and then Abida
Yeah.
Parveen, and here you had Badali brothers and all that. But there are a lot of people who just go to Sufi music concerts without really knowing what the purpose of that whole music is. So, okay, they go to enjoy themselves and fine, but a bit of effort on their part should also be there, in terms of understanding the whole, and at least giving it the respect that it this thing, rather than just go and clap for the sake of clapping and at the wrong points also, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh,
So,
but you spoke about certain talent or music not getting as many years as they deserve. How do you think that can be helped with?
I think certain people can play a bigger role in this. One is we music journalists, of course,
Yeah.
um, because we can spread out the message. Again, it's how much we reach, and all it depends on the publication. It depends on the person's uh,
Yeah.
standing in the this thing. Organizers giving them opportunities, taking risks. This is very important because the thing is, many organizers don't want to take risks with shows. They want a full house. But sometimes you get there's an underground what do you call it, private Mehfil thing also, where these people can be given. I know friends who organize things just because passion, and or some there is some business element involved, networking you can call it,
Yeah.
but they call artists who are not so well known and make them sing. And because of that, I mean, I'll tell you a story of Kailash Kher being discovered that way only.
Uh-huh.
He used to sing in these small mehfils that used to happen at a businessman's place. And he became very well known in that circuit. But beyond that, he never, this thing, and he never felt the need to. He was happy. He came from some place
Yeah.
up north. And then suddenly somebody recommended him. And our editor that time, Akar Patel, he happened to be at one such this thing. Then he told me to write an article on Kailash Kher, which I did. And somebody, this person from Milestone Entertainment, Rajiv Sharma, he spotted that. And then Vishal Shekhar spotted that. And then they given them an opportunity. So
Yeah.
Milestone recorded an album, and then Vishal Shekhar. I mean, that album was not released for certain reasons. Then, but Vishal Shekhar gave them Allah Ke Bande, and that's when the whole
Yeah.
this thing. So through these mehfils, there should be people who should actually spread the word. Like in this case, it happened with a newspaper article, but there are the similar things can happen. Like if you see somebody good in such a mehfil, you can tell an organizer or somebody to promote
Yeah.
the artist and all that. So that's how, and you need backing by the organizers also. Like certain artists
Organizers need sponsors.
organize any sponsors, and
Yeah.
sponsors. That's again the this thing. Sponsors again look at
Yeah.
celebrity, so which is why it's a vicious this thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
and there are also cases when certain organizers just and there's another thing also. Some musicians have attitude, which is another. I know musicians who could have done much better, but because of attitude and because of too many conditions. And there's also, I mean, I obviously won't take any names here, but there's a lot of people are discovered young, very talented. They are prodigy level,
Yeah.
but too pushy parents, too many people trying to pounce on that. Somewhere down the line, people have got confused and gone into oblivion. I've seen cases like that also. So it all
Yeah,
depends.
we do quite have a few prodigies.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
very young.
where will they last 20 years later is where one has to see.
Hmm.
Like right now they're up there. And that again, it's again, that's another thing that I feel musicians have to, this thing, managing their whole temperament. It's not easy. Why is Zakir Hussain still there where he is? Because of his humility, primary reason, and his discipline. He's extremely disciplined and he's a humble person. He knows he's a student. He'll
Yeah.
remain a student. And there's so many musicians I know. They first, like even I as a journalist, I'm a student. Like I mean, there's nothing that every day I'm learning so many things. But with these people, these are like they never stop with their learning. The
Yeah.
other day he was giving an interview and he said that he likes working with Rakesh Chaurasia and Niladri Kumar because they know the Western system to an extent
Yeah.
and can adjust it and how to this thing. There are the things I learned from them. Now, why would an ustad of that caliber talk about somebody much younger than me? So that's the thing that And the other statement that he made in that same interview, which I did for Hindu, he said that the moment you start considering yourself to be an ustad or a maestro, you're distancing yourself from others. So you just have to keep learning, and you're part of a music is a community thing. It's not your own expertise and all that. If you're playing with a certain kind of group, you have to follow the things of that group without thing. So there are a lot of things that even musicians have to take care in terms of temperaments, attitude, pressure, in terms of some people like there are companies which want to promote you. There are promoters who want to give you a lot of shows. There are certain artists who are doing a lot of shows every 15 days. You find a new song by them. But whether they manage that, it's a tough thing. And there's there's a lot of insecurity at the top also.
Yeah.
Which even some of the seniors have faced, which unfortunately, but they've handled it. Like,
Right. So you attend so many shows across a variety of genres. Where's your heart at?
it changes.
No, of course it does. But what's on your
I'm a
comfort?
very mood for this thing. You know, there are times when I just, of course, like if I want to listen at home, then I I have a certain. It's a mix of what's coming in, like in terms of reviews. That has to be there as part of the scene. Keeping in touch, basically, with the new releases. So every Friday, the international releases. There's a website which I go through, which lists the new releases. So every Friday morning is spent in checking out all that, whatever is there. Like in terms of what might appeal to me. Like today morning, there was an album by Susie Quattro and Katie Tunstall. Susie is a 70s singer. Katie Tunstall is
Yeah.
more recent, around mid 2000s, or what, 2005, 2006. And they've done a duet album. So today morning, I was listening to that and checking it out, enjoying it, and sort of mentally preparing for what I'm going to say here and simultaneously and all. So, and there is also a lot of music that I like to listen to when I'm at home at night. So it could be uh, sometimes, I mean, it just changes. Like there's no specific this thing. When I'm with friends, I listen to rock music because everybody's in that mood.
Yeah.
But alone, I very rarely listen to unless it's a new album or something. I don't go back to the classics now. I used to do that, except for Jethro Tull, which is which I'm a big fan of. So that I keep going back to at home, like as and when, or maybe to one or two.
The only band where the flautist
Yeah,
is the front man.
Yeah.
And also, were they the first ones to do a concept album?
No,
In
not
the
the
West?
first, but they were
Definitely
they
the
did.
most prominent one.
They one of the most prominent ones,
Yeah.
but they were the first one to do a full album of 40 minutes, like which was one song, Thick as a Brick. Like, so plus the fact that when I interviewed him in 2005, I got his email and I'm in touch with him off and on email. So yesterday was his birthday actually, so I wished him and he got back. So that was that's something that gives me a little bit of, but yeah, but so at night, like suddenly, there was a phase last year, late last year, when I used to listen to some OTT music. Like you had this what do you call this movie, Kala, and you had Mukhbir, and you had one more thing was there, Monica, oh my darling. So those are the songs that I used to play at night. For some reason, like it just got onto that, and it continued for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and all. Raat ko before sleeping, that used to be there. Later on, when Jubilee was released, I used to play Jubilee. So it's not that I mean, people might say that this is not the kind of music that I might normally listen to and all that, but it's just that mood thing. That
No, I also do discover a lot of music that I hear as part of series
Yeah.
and films.
Yeah.
A lot of OSTs.
OSTs, yeah,
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
So last week I was on that OST trip because I went to see Oppenheimer.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I could not pay so much attention to the music. Normally, क्या होता है, if the film is not
That's the
engrossing, my
definition
music
of very good BGM,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
You-
So and then I heard the whole soundtrack. Now I want to see the movie again just to get that soundtrack, how it is. This thing.
Yeah. I was very pleased with myself that I predicted that, spoiler alert, during the explosion, he's going to go quiet.
Quite. And if you want to really see silence, watch this movie on Amazon Prime, First Man.
Okay.
So if you want to see silence, how silence is used.
Oh, Castaway is a fantastic example
Yeah,
of really pushing on the silence as BGM. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so
Mm.
these are things. But basically, I prefer beach. Mein if I get into a mood, like I'll play some Kishori Amonkar. Like she keeps coming back onto my
Mm.
system, or Pravat Ray, or Ashwini Bide.
Ah. So comfort playlist is what Jithrotal, little bit of Kishori Amonkar, and
Yeah, jazz, a lot of jazz from here and there,
mm.
new jazz, old jazz. Like so, those are the same ghazals. Again, I forgot about. That's another
Right.
Mehdi Hasan, Ghulam Ali, Begum Akhtar.
Right.
Mehdi Hasan, there was a time when I used to buy a cassette or a CD if I had 9 of the 10 songs because I didn't have the 10th song. Like it was that kind of craze.
Right. Are you a collector?
I used to be. Now I have so many
Now, yeah.
CDs. Like I mean, I have they're all lying there. I've disposed of some of them, but
Oh,
I gave them to some friend who said he would give it somewhere. I said, "Le jao tum." But those are the ones that I did not really. I mean, there were a lot of review stuff which I did not listen to again. Like once I reviewed them. So, but my own selection, there's a lot lying there which I.
yes, there used to be a very cutesy ritual where people would send journalist a
Yeah,
CD
yeah,
and with a nice note or
yeah,
some
yeah.
extra things. Right. Do you miss owning physical copies of music?
I still own them, but I miss listening to them on a physical player because
Yeah.
you don't have a. I have a record player where I
Yeah.
listen to some records, but I am not like a. I don't. I have not made up my collection like many of my friends have. Like because there again, like I mean, I listen to so much idhar udhar. Like I don't. Uh, somehow, I maybe I should keep a certain this thing budget every month. Ki ye khareedna and all, but it's not happening.
Yeah.
And plus, some records are really expensive these days. Yeah, like you look at first-hand original records, it's some going to 4,000, 4,500, and all.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Not with what you make in India.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So if artists or anyone else has to reach you for a review or for inviting you to a show, what are the proper channels?
The best way is email.
Uh huh.
Yeah, so I can spell it out.
Yeah.
Nkusnur. It's my name, N
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Kusnur at gmail.com. Yeah.
Right. And any protocol you would
No,
recommend?
no. Just basically, if anybody is sending a song, a brief on the song
Mm-hmm.
and a brief on the artist. One paragraph is good enough. The
Yeah.
rest all I'll make up.
Yeah.
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 So
Okay.
that's good enough. But a lot of people do tend to send me directly on Insta and on what do you call it?
Does that work?
I go through everybody and I respond to everybody. Whether I write about everybody
Wow.
is this thing. That's another thing. Like, I mean, I feel it's nice if you at least respond to the person that I've got it. Like, but me, like,
Yeah.
sometimes they get a little pushy also.
Mm.
Ki, when are you using it and all that? And then I have to be a little more diplomatic then. But the response is there. Like,
Right.
it's something that we learned. I mean, we are lucky in some ways in our journalism, this thing. Like, we've been taught these things. Like, a lot of people, otherwise, we've been told that anybody who contacts you for some reason, at least get back to them, whatever the consequences is.
That's
Like, so.
lovely to hear.
And I know and other people who worked with me in the past who still do that. Like, it's
Yeah.
always uh, this, like,
Yeah. Just a lot of common courtesy and kindness.
yeah, it's something that is inbuilt. I mean, it's trained. It's not inbuilt as in that way, but
Yeah.
it's coming from somewhere.
What ending thoughts do you have for musicians or upcoming music journalists or anyone really in and around who are interested in music?
Okay. Basically, passion and focus. Like, and because those are the two things. With focus, a lot of other things take into place. Like your riyaz
Yeah.
gets into this thing, you get disciplined automatically, and passion helps you to discover things. There again, like everybody is a student. Like if, as I said, if Zakir Hussain or even Jagjit ji used to say that very
Yeah.
often, that I still learn, ये वो हम तो सीखते ही हैं, ये वो करके. He had a typical way of talking. So, and so many musicians, like if your this thing is to learn, and it happens with passion, it happens to with this thing, results will happen. Everybody is not lucky all the time, as for this thing, but never to get disheartened. It's like somewhere there's a line and stuff like that. Music journalists, again, like today's this thing, like to keep in touch with different forms of music, and understand musicians, like, because how a musician functions, what is his mindset, and this thing, that if you get to know, you needn't be best friends with him or like always cater to what he says. Like he might, I mean, there are people, musicians who are very PR driven and all that, so you don't have to
Yeah.
listen to everything that they say. If he says that I'm the best and you write it, then that's not the this thing, but you should understand how he thinks about musically, in terms of what kind of approach that he takes and all. And it happens with conversation, it happens with even understanding his music. Like even if by listening to the music also, you get an idea that whether the person is which way he's this thing. So to be open, because today musicians get into different fields.
Yeah.
Like it's not there are specialists, but there are also people who get into this thing. So
Yeah.
one has to do that. And again, like writing style, you understand who the reader is. Like it's ultimately you're writing for the reader, like some not for your own satisfaction or something, like. And again, as I said, it's opinions, if it comes to reviews and all that, they're always subjective.
Yeah.
And I don't think uh, any single opinion really will overpower anybody else's this thing, so keep that in mind.